Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon all of you. My name is Ardian al-Mahdi.
And I'm Hussam al-Mahdi.
And I'm Jamil al-Mahdi.
So welcome back to the Goal of the Wise show, the show where we've been talking about for the past 7 chapters, the covenants which God had sent in the past, and we just finished up with the 7th covenant, which we are in right now, a new deal, a new page, a new chapter with God Almighty, the final chapter with God Almighty in terms of His relationship with the human beings and the last foundation that He now has with us. If you guys want to read the Goal of the Wise yourself and to catch up with us, right now we're in door number 8. Hopefully we can pull up the QR code on the screen. So this way you guys are able to scan the QR code yourself or check out our website, theahmadireligion.org. And there you'll be able to find the Goal of the Wise, available in both, in many languages, English, Arabic, German, French, Spanish, and many more, hopefully to come. There's also the Manifesto, Al-Haftar Sharif, and many other books available, especially the book, which I think is an amazing book for those who are into mysticism, those who are into the esoteric side, besides the Goal of the Wise, of course, which is a masterpiece. Go check out the book Al-Haftar Sharif, because Al-Haftar Sharif is a book which has many mystical things, such as the fact that it talks about something that we're going to be talking about on the show today, which is the celestial bodies. So when it comes to belief in the celestial bodies, we understand that this is now related to what? Astronomy, astrology, horoscopes, the things that Abrahamic faiths actually push aside. So you'll find the Christians and you'll find the Muslims, when it comes to the study of the planets in a spiritual aspect, they say that it is shirk, it is association with God, it is blasphemy, this is the works of the devil, and many other things like this. But al-Sadiq from him, his peace, in door number 8 and page 128 starts to divulge with us how this is not a belief made up by Satan. It's not a belief made up by a bunch of witches who decided to lead people astray, but it is actually closer to home. It is actually a practice and a teaching by God Himself.
Exactly. It's something that you can even see in pop culture today. And it's one of these things that is, in essence, when you look at it, is similar to alcohol. It's something that has always been around from the time of Adam until now, something that, different prophets and messengers, which we'll get into later, have brought forth a knowledge of. It's something that they have used in their way, in spreading their message and for their advantage in many cases, something I'm again alluding to later. And something that, all different civilizations and communities use, like the study of stars and the placements of like the temples, the pyramids, Mayans, ancient Egypt, all of these different civilizations used the stars to navigate, the stars to, again, place their temples into for the sort of power and benefits that it comes with. So this is something that, again, has always been there, just like the topic of alcohol that we've mentioned, that, in this day and age, with the certain mentality of Muslims nowadays, or Abrahamic faith nowadays, sort of shun away. But when you look again at your human history, you find that this topic of stars, astronomy, astrology, and the different sort of benefits and things that come with it are all actually true. Which is something
I think,
we'll get into.
Just to give a brief into the history of this stuff, as you said, we all looked up to the stars. All nations, no matter where in history, since the beginning of humanity until today, we looked up to the stars, so that, because if we did not know how to read the stars, we wouldn't have survived. That's one of the main things. In order for you to travel back then, you needed to look at the stars. In order for you to trade, you needed to look into the stars. If you wanted to go into wars as countries, you needed to look into the stars. Every human being at that time who had traveled outside of their own town needed to know a little bit about the stars. And if they didn't, just the basics of what's north, what's south, what's going on here. Quran uses the stars. The Bible talks about stars. All the ancient books of history talks about stars. So our relationship with the stars, is something that's very, very deep. And in fact, we find it in every culture here you'll find the stars, pop stars they call them, stars they call them, the movie stars they call them. It's so ingrained in our language and in our culture that we kind of bypass it a lot.
I mean, one of our logos is the Star of David itself. So there's always a star that is embedded in religion and, as you said, pop culture. And you'll have this idea of star like in Hollywood, or like when people sing make a wish upon a star, or like when there's a shooting star, people like to make wishes. I mean, if you guys remember, we were in Sweden together, and I think Sweden was a really, really cool chapter in our spiritual experience, because in the middle of Sweden, you looked up into the night sky, and we are just baffled by the luminary bodies. We're baffled to see that, hey, you can see Mars clearly, Venus, Jupiter. You can see all of these planets super clear. You get to see even the star Sirius. The Sirius star, my God, it's like in the sky, it's the brightest star in the sky, and when you look at it, it starts changing colors, and it was something so fascinating. Even al-Sadiq from his piece would ask and say, hey guys, guess what kind of star that is? Some of us would guess, okay, it's Jupiter, or maybe it's Saturn. It was always this guessing game amongst the brothers even at that time. And the constellations even, you had you had the constellation of like the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, the Dog Major. You had all these
Orion's Belt.
Orion's Belt. Orion's Belt was the coolest for me because Orion's Belt, obviously, it's a constellation of Orion. But Orion's Belt hits close to home because we've in Egypt, that's where the pyramid structure comes from, right? They believe that the three pyramids actually point towards Orion's Belt, which is super fascinating. So there's a story that's being told in the heavens. There's a story being told when you look up in the sky. How it's being told and what it means is something that only Muhammad and the family Muhammad have knowledge of. So let's take a look at an example of what Muhammad and the family Muhammad have said and mentioned in that book, which I have recommended to you guys, Al-Haft al-Sharif.
In the manuscript, Al-Haft al-Sharif, Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar asked Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, from him is peace. And what about the piercing stars that we see between the sky and the earth, spread out and hanging? Imam al-Sadiq replied, those are the light bodies that were made for the believers from their works. As such in the sky of bodies, a sun and moon, seen by the ones unlike them in the manner which you see them, the honored light bodies. And in every sky of these 7 Adamites is an Adam standing, fixed on the same example of what Allah created of the first creation. And they have ranks in the skies, sky by sky, in accordance with their rank and degree.
So, okay, it seems right there that it's basically made very clear. Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar, the companion of Imam al-Sadiq, is asking about this topic that we're talking about. And the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, Imam al-Sadiq from his piece, basically points out that it's us, basically. We are the luminary bodies. We are the planets.
Exactly.
So, that's something very fascinating. And do you know what kind of pops up into my mind, guys? What pops up into my mind is, as soon as that was read out, the first thing that popped up into my mind was the dream of Joseph. Where Joseph says, whether you take the Bible version or the Quranic version, where it says that he goes up to his father Jacob and says, my father, I saw the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars or planets coming to me and prostrating to me. Now, you would think like literal sense, like, okay, this means that the luminary bodies are like somehow alive and they're prostrating to Joseph, or they believe in Joseph. But the dream came in the form of like, hey, that these astral bodies, the sun, moon, and the 11 planets, are actually his father, his mother, and his 11 brothers who are there at that time. Well, that's the interpretation of the Muslims. But we see here that even in Islam, there is that belief in the Quran itself about the sun, the moon, and the planets actually being believers or being people.
Exactly that. And as it says here, that it's the Imam's Imam al-Sadiq's revealing that the stars in the night sky are actually believers. And as you mentioned in Sweden, I didn't want to say that before you read this verse because it would give it away. But there are obviously planets and planets that are people on this day, on this planet right now that we can know, and that in later episodes we're going to reveal. But going back to what you said, when this chapter was revealed to us, because obviously we had the Gold of the Wise revealed to us chapter by chapter. Once we had this chapter between our hands, I remember how excited we were to just go out and look at the sky, and like, we was all asking each other, I wonder which one you are, and look at the sky. Because when you think about that for a second, like you go outside, and for your whole life you see these beautiful stars. You know, the more darker the place you have, the less light pollution, the brighter and the more vivid it is. And we were in Sweden, and Sweden is obviously close, has a closer altitude, and you see like the northern lights, this kind of stuff, these phenomena there in Sweden. And yeah, when this chapter was revealed, it was just amazing for us, because we went out and you had like another layer of wonderment at looking up at the stars and the greatness of it, and we were like looking at each other like, which one are you, wondering which one we are, and then trying to find some of the stars that we knew who they were. And it was just a magical, mystical moment for us. I just wanted to share that.
I think it's amazing, because while Carl Sagan said, which is a famous astrologer, he said something that he said we are all star dust. The Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam adds to that. Yes, for sure we are star dust, but we are in fact planets and stars and shooting stars and suns and moons, and we are much more than just that, because when you actually take into consideration that our brains are almost similar to a radio station, right? And so when we're saying this that like there are sort of, for example, people who are walking down the street right now whose frequency is the frequency of, say, Mars. Yes, who are in that frequency, therefore they are the embodiment of that planet's frequency, being here on the planet Earth, walking in a physical format, because that body is tuned into that soul or that spirit or that vibration or that frequency or that whatever you wanna name it. So what we're talking about is in fact something that's very scientifically based, and it's not just scientifically based. In fact, it's something very fascinating, and we all know that in our own self. That's why we find, for example, ourselves like connected to certain stars or certain star systems or certain. We talk about we talk about zodiac. We talk about when we're born and under what star alignments are we born, and what kind of how the effect of those stars at that time what kind of effect does it have on you personally? Because we know that there is no coincidences in this world. That when you actually project a specific light on an organism, it's going to make it react. When you project a different light, it's going to react differently. Physics react differently to everything. So the idea is by observation alone. So what about now you're tuned into a specific frequency of a planet, an entire planet that's rotating at speeds that are quite astronomical, you can say, yes? Like the speeds that these planets are rotating at what directions they're going, what kind of electromagnetic fields they have, all these different effects that they have on their surroundings, and the interconnectivity of these stars through the quantum entanglement, for example. You're starting to tap into a world where it is so fascinating behind the eye, behind what the eye can see. That's why we call it the unseen world, right? Because it's an unseen, and we have to believe in the unseen, because there's more stuff happening there than what our eyes can see.
Yeah, for sure. And just as a sort of backup point to what you're saying there, is like, even if you just take the moon, how much an effect that has on planet Earth in terms of the control of tides, control, like it has
moods of
people. It's just a funny note, actually, with the city that I was from, you'd actually have higher police force on Saturday nights, party nights, clubbing nights, on Saturday nights when the moon was full moon, because every full moon there was a higher crime rate. Wow. So it just goes to show that even the police are using this as like they've seen it happen kind of scenario. You see that the women's menstrual system is sometimes connected to this. You see that fish and sort of reproduction times also connected to the tide. So a lot of the moon and how that affects just planet Earth is quite massive. So it just goes to show, like, if the moon has that big effect on the planet, then I'm sure bigger planets and celestial bodies would also have an effect on what happens here on Earth.
Yeah, that is, and it is a fascinating science. It's something that even people who are born in America, they're aware when they look into the presidency and the people who surround the presidents, you'll find that some of them are actually astrologers and people who actually advise them about what to do and what not to do on certain dates, on certain days. So there is knowledge that they admit works, and most of these guys really, I mean, they claim to be Christians, but they're mainly like, they portray themselves really out to be more like atheists in nature. But you'll find them using science of astrology, of astronomy, of the horoscopes, the zodiacs, whatever you want to call it, and implementing it in their lives and their own security. So they really base off their own well-being off of the stars, which is something that most logical people would not do. But you find that happening in America with the elites, with those who are president, with those who are in Congress, with those who are senators. You find it amongst these people. I mean, Sylvester Stallone's mother, for example, was I think for the Reagan administration, she was someone who used to read the stars for Reagan. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was even a point where there was actually an assassination attempt upon President Reagan, and then it turned out that because he had listened to this astrologer, that the attempt did not take place. Something of that nature. So yeah, there's a lot.
For sure.
Yeah, they use it for sure. And that's why it's so famous in Hollywood, and that's why it's so famous in pop culture, because they understand that this is true. Otherwise, if it was fake, no one would really talk about it. It's just some like old tale that has no benefit, and it's like, just like throw it in the trash.
And I was just going to say, to again add to your point, is like it's something that's always happened. I believe King Herod, in the time of Jesus, had an astrologer that was, following when the three wise men came to him, etc. He then turned to his astrologer and said like basically what's going on. Pharaoh had the same. So a lot of these people from even like ancient times until now are using astrologers, astronomers for advice. They are in the positions of advisors. So there must be some truth to it, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
One more thing is that our planets just rocks rotating around themselves in space, in empty space. This is almost a it's almost like what would you call something that when you reduce something from something so magnificent and so amazing into something that's just mediocre. You're saying, because I cannot see the electromagnetic fields and these beings in different light because I have these eyes for sensors, therefore the mystery of this thing is become nothing. It's nothing. It's now a stone. It's not just a rock. But in fact, I mean, if we are going to take a planet as an example, take planet Earth, for example. Planet Earth is a living being. Many millions of people believe it's called Gaia. Millions of people believe it's called something else. Millions, like you go into the actual history, you'll find it being mentioned as many names before, not just one or two names. So the idea is that if the planet Earth is an example that we have of what a planet could be like if it was the way it is right now, which is like it has trees for hair, rivers for bloodlines, like all kinds of like oceans and all kinds of beings and creatures that are living on it. So what is to say that because of our sensors, these planets out there are all living planets in the same way that we see Earth as living planets. The only difference is they exist under a frequency which our eyes cannot see. But because now we have a planet that is alive. So when you're telling us that all of these other planets are dead, there is no life on it, this is just an assumption based on what we know now, but what we're saying, what we're proving today is even on the planet itself, for many thousands of years, we've had evidence that to a trajectory or towards you can say towards a pattern, which is there is always something in the unseen that is alive, even if right now this air that has bacteria is alive in it, we don't know. Our bodies is packed with with living beings and organisms we did not know about before. So the unseen, just because it is unseen, doesn't mean that there is nothing there. It's not an empty space. It's actually filled with things.
And I like what you said about how for sure the astral bodies or the celestial bodies are animate. They're basically alive. We'll find even du'as of the Ahlul Bayt sometimes making dua and facing the moon and speaking to the moon. There are narrations, tons of narrations concerning the moon and concerning the sun itself. So this is something that even in Islam that we find. And another thing that we also find too is even in the Quran it talks about, there's a whole surah called Surah Al-Najm, the chapter of the star, and the Prophet is swearing by the star, right? If I'm not mistaken, he says by the star, by the piercing star. And you'll even find another surah which has an ayat that says, and by the Lord of Sirius. So why is it that the Quran mentions a star, mentions Sirius, and by the Lord of Sirius, unless there is a great importance of these celestial bodies? And obviously we know that in Islam, and this is what the Christians would accuse Prophet Muhammad of, that they would now because of Nag Hammadi coming out, the Nag Hammadi library being discovered, and seeing that Prophet Muhammad has many relations with the Gnostic teachings of Islam, Christians now also see that when it comes to Islam, for sure they had taken from the Nag Hammadi. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a heretic who believed in a Gnostic version of Christianity, and that's where most of his teachings come from. There's an interesting book by the name and by the name that it is given, the Gospel of Judas. It is a gospel that many people don't accept. Many people say it is a heretical gospel, but this is a gospel that talks in depth, really, about the stars and about the celestial bodies. Now, if we could pull up the first clip concerning the Gospel of Judas, it says, Jesus said to them, stop struggling against me. Each one of you has his own star. So over here we see clearly that Jesus is saying, like, each of you is up there somewhere. Each of you has his own star. And it says, and I wasn't sent to the corruptible generation, but to the strong and incorruptible generation, because no enemy has ruled over that generation, nor any of the stars. Truly I say to you, the pillar of fire will fall quickly, and that generation won't be moved by the stars. So it seems like, and we can come back to the screen, it seems like Jesus here, when he's speaking about the stars, he's talking about how everyone has their own star, and how stars or planets or any celestial body that a person might be can be moved, that they can be influenced, or that there is an influence upon the person himself. And it's proven actually in the next clip where we see what Jesus says to Judas Iscariot. Let's pull up the next clip where he says, Jesus answered and said, your star has led you astray, Judas, and that no person of mortal birth is worthy to enter the house you've seen, because that place is reserved for those who are holy. Neither the sun nor the moon will rule there, nor the day, but those who are holy will always stand in the realm with the holy angels. Look, I've told you the mysteries of the kingdom, and I've taught you about the error of the stars, over this, and it says over the 12 realms. So we see here, guys, that it's very clear that Judas was affected by his own star. The star of Judas that he owned led him astray. Because what are we aware of? We are aware that Judas Iscariot betrays Jesus, he apostates, and sells Jesus out for just a few silver coins. I mean, that's scary. Imagine, to imagine that the stars have an effect on your decision making and your belief, probably. I mean, that is something incredibly scary.
Yeah, I think that's like it's much more fascinating, because then you have you have to insert into it, is this a simulation? You start to look into the world from a different perspective. You start to look at the body that you're carrying in a different way, because like why do we say, for example, the souls enter into a body, right? It's like, what are bodies then, if this is the case? You know, our bodies, the stars, of course, we're not saying something of that kind. We're saying that the light or the soul that is inside is that thing that's moving it and animating it and so on and so forth. Without that light, it would just be almost like an empty vessel that is like equivalent to an NPC, a non-playable character inside a video game, where it's like just what's moving it is the self or the ego. But there is obviously an entity on the planet that is not ego, that is anti-ego, right? And there is ego and there is anti-ego. There is light, there is darkness, right? There is opposition in those forms, in those ways, and we can see the two movements of the planets, of these beings beings here on the planet Earth today, where we're trying to discover now what exactly is this extraterrestrial entity, right? That is called the soul, that is not actually from this planet and is from different planets, which now we discover, oh, okay, subhanAllah, the planets are living beings, and they do manifest themselves here on the planet Earth, in as much as they, if you were in a video game and you start to manifest, take over a body and start controlling it like with a controller. So it's how these stars are doing their thing and how they're alive is beyond our. What we're trying to do is to tell you that this is the whole situation system is beyond our imagination.
Exactly, that's
so
for sure.
We should just what we're asking you to do is to be patient and also at the same time open-minded and fair, and also just keep in mind God is great and His creation is great, and how He does things is intensely mystical. And what we're talking about here is evidently inside of your books, inside of the history books. Is Judah, Jesus is telling him, your star has led you astray. Well, what does that mean? How much decisions does the star have on you? We will get to that.
That's what I was going to say. It starts, as you mentioned, things that it brings to the table in terms of your questions. You sort of have to then guess what sort of free will, destiny, these kind of things.
What is destiny?
Exactly, because we have the saying in English pop culture. I'm sure you probably have one in Arabic as well. It's written in the stars, right? Something that is ordained to happen, kind of thing. And you see that with this, because obviously he says your star has led you astray, so it would again be written in the stars, right? So it comes down to this sort of this thing, was he always meant to go astray? Is it something that he did that changed the future? This kind of scenario, what come first? And then it's just
it's almost like, are we a product of a galactic battlefield that we don't know about between light and darkness? You know? What are we really? Is this body that you're controlling today? Is it just is it free? Is it free? Are you actually free? If that is the case, why are there so many limitations which you cannot do? So it's then we go into deeper kind of concepts, and it's a very interesting concepts to say the least. But yes, exactly. You have Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam talking about the stars in the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, where they do say that they are the stars and the believers are the stars. And so we have to believe in the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam, the family of the Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa Prophet Muhammad, who he said to us, I'm leaving with you two weighty things. You will never go astray if you hold on to them. And they're the ones who are telling us that this is the case. How magical it is.
True science.
It is.
No, it is. And, just as we talked about how the moon has an effect on the tides, I mean, the human body is made up of, I believe, 70% water.
Exactly.
So if the moon can have an effect on the oceans and the tides and the waters, well, then for sure, I mean, it cannot be put aside that perhaps the planetary bodies can possibly have an effect on us, because they do have an effect on us. And that's something that everyone has seen from the ancient times up until now. So what else do we find from Judas in his conversation with Jesus? What else does Jesus want to point out? Let's continue with another part of the Gospel of Judas. It says that Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, the stars complete all things." So when it comes to things happening in life, the stars are in charge of everything, just as Jesus said that there is a certain realm that even the sun and the moon are not in charge of. They have no reign over. When Sackless completes the time span that's been determined for him, their first star will appear with the generations, and they'll finish what's been said. Then they'll sleep around in my name, murder their children. And let's skip that part because it's just basically broken parts of the gospel. Bringing generations and presenting them to Sackless. And after that, we'll bring the 12 tribes of Israel from the generations who will all serve Sackless, sinning in my name. And your star will rule over the 13th realm. Then Jesus laughed, and Judas said, "Master, why are you laughing at me?" Then Jesus answered and said, "I'm not laughing at you, but at the error of the stars, because these 6 stars go astray with these 5 warriors, and they'll all be destroyed along with their creations." Then Judas said to Jesus, "What will those do who have been baptized in your name?" And Jesus said, Truly I say to you, this baptism which they've received in my name will destroy the whole generation of the earthly Adam. Tomorrow they'll torture the one who bears me. Truly I say to you, no hand of a mortal human will fall upon me. Truly I say to you, Judas, those who offer sacrifices to sackless, everything that's evil, but you'll do more than all of them. Basically pointing out Judas Iscariot's betrayal, that it's going to even be worse for him. Because you'll sacrifice the human who bears me. And this is kind of like a hint that
he wasn't sacrificed on the cross. Someone else is going to bear him.
Even Judas, even the Gospel of Judas, guys, is talking about how someone else is going to take the place of Jesus. And Jesus says, how is it going to be? Someone else will enter my flesh. Someone else will possess my body and be crucified in place. And that's why you'll find Christians who are believers in this gospel falsely believe and think that perhaps Jesus is saying that Judas Iscariot will take up the cross. Which is not the case, and that's something that we'll go over in another episode. But let's go on with the gospel. It says over here, your horn has been raised, your anger has been kindled, your star has ascended. So it seems like now, okay, Judas Iscariot's star, it goes up. What does that mean? Your star has ascended, and your heart has strayed. So it seems like the movement of the stars has an effect now on the emotions and the drive and the fire and inspiration of Judas Iscariot. Truly I say to you, okay, I guess we could skip this part over because there's a bunch of missing gaps here. The thrones of the realms have been defeated, the kings have grown weak, and the angelic generations have grieved, and the evil they sowed is destroyed, and the ruler is wiped out, meaning one of the luminary bodies. And then the fruit of the great generation of Adam will be exalted, because before heaven, earth, and the angels, that generation from the realms exists. Look, you've been told everything. Lift up your eyes and see the cloud with the light in it and the stars around it. And the star that leads the way is your star. So basically that's pretty much Jesus' way of saying, like, look, this is what your star is commanding you to do. This is what your star is saying. Do what you will. Because he understood that, Judas, you'll betray me. And guess what? I'm able to actually read the star, and your star told me you're astray. Your star told me you'll betray me. So do what you will, Judas Iscariot. So that's intense that now we see that a prophet from God is looking into the stars, is looking into the sky for what? Not because he's bored, not because like he's like chilling and like wanting to see like, hey, okay, well it seems like Sirius is glowing really brightly today. You know, I wonder what else is going to happen. I wonder if there's going to be a comet. No, he's looking into the stars because he's able to read it and understand what's going on. He's able to identify his disciples and he's able to see like, okay, well, Judas's star is ascending. It is allowing him to go astray, and it is leading him to the way of being astray as an apostate.
Exactly.
So, wow. So, like, imagine that your own star that you're under allows you to either be a believer or a disbeliever. That's incredible, and at the same time, that's scary because now we have a God who is the fashioner, who is the maker, who, as you said, everything is written in the stars, right? Everything seems like it's predetermined and predestined. I mean, how much are we at the mercy of these stars, and how much do we have to plead to God in order that He guide us and lead us to the straight path if, like, we're under the influence of our own stars?
And the stars can be guided too. And it's funny that I was reading the book of Enoch earlier, and a lot of philosophers, a lot of these scholars, they say that in the chapters, I think 18 to 21, and a few different places in the book of Enoch, he mentions about stars that are being punished, actually. And he describes things like black holes and several interpretations of these verses, which is quite crazy because he's obviously from the time of Adam till Noah, they had no concept of black holes back then. And in these verses, if you read them, you can easily, now knowing this, interpret these verses. This is just like my own thinking and what the scholars say, that these are stars that are being punished for being disobedient. And what does Jesus say here? It says that I'm not laughing at you when he's talking to Judas, I'm laughing at the error of the stars. So it's just something I wanted to bring up because I found it quite interesting earlier. It's not something that...
I did ask al-Sadiq about the black holes. He said it's in the future he's going to reveal about it. It's a very bad creature.
Exactly.
Oh, it's a creature itself.
It's a bad creature. So.
Wow.
Exactly. So and he says this Uriel. He's with Enoch. Says he's with Uriel, and he's saying that basically these ones. Why do you care so much? These are basically disobedient creations that are being punished.
That are like, and the light is being sucked out of them.
And because he basically sees what he sees in the verses is like this black hole with like these three great like mountains full of light in there that can't escape, and they're being like tormented. And he's like worried. He's like, what is going on over there? And he's like why do you care? Like, you're with me, like, we're good. And he's
fine.
like, he kind of explains it to him.
You're in the right gravity.
Again, it's something that isn't sort of confirmed. It's just something that I thought was interesting based upon reading this chapter. But there is a verse I wanted to bring up actually from the Bible again. It's from Jude, which is obviously a disciple of Christ, and it's from the book of Jude. So I'll just quickly read it, and we can reflect upon it because it is similar to this, but just obviously a bit shorter. So again, this is the book of Jude in the Bible. It says, "Yet in the manner these people also, relying on their dreams, defile the flesh, reject authority, and blaspheme the glorious ones. But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, 'The Lord rebuke you.' But these people blaspheme all that they do not understand, and they are destroyed by all that they, like unreasoning animals, understand instinctively. Woe to them, for they walk in the way of Cain, and abandon themselves for the sake of gain to Balaam's error, and perished in Korah's rebellion. These are hidden reefs at your love feasts, as they feast with you without fear. Shepherds feeding themselves, waterless clouds swept along by winds, fruitless trees in late autumn, dead twice uprooted, wild waves from the sea casting up foam of their own shame, wandering stars, for whom the gloom of utter darkness has been reserved forever." So again, we see that basically in this verses he's talking about these non-working scholars and these like wolves in sheep clothing that are crept in the communities around Jesus in this time, and the need that they should be respectful and show humility to the disciples and the teachings of Jesus. But what's interesting to note is he says wandering stars, for whom gloom and utter darkness has been reserved forever. And we see here that the star of Judas wandered, it went away from the straight path, and he was doomed. The gloom of darkness forever. So it's just sort of an affirmation of what Jesus is saying here. Judas was basically paraphrasing it and saying it to the non-working scholars of that time, saying that basically your stars are wandering and you have no benefit, in the same way that fruitless trees, waterless clouds, and shepherds that are feeding themselves and not their flock. So it's a very like harsh and stark warning to people with a mind to pay attention to, because if they know what happened with the story of Judas, and they know about his star and what happened, then when he says to them, "Hey, your stars are wandering, you better be careful." And
you're basically going astray, just like I am. Exactly. He didn't know that he was probably until Jesus Christ ﷺ told him that his star has led him astray, just like he told the scholars that their stars are led astray. So the idea is like, this is something like a restart or a stop, a pause that we have to make as we live our life. We've never been told something like this before, like in our lives, as Muslims, as Sunnis, as Shias, as Christians, as whatever we are, unless you're like religion is very specifically like targeting these kinds of things, but our religion did not tell us this stuff. So we have to then now take a moment to digest what we're saying here, what is being said, what is being revealed in the Gospel of al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, the goal of the wise. What is being revealed is something so big that it's mind-altering, and it alters every single perception of life that we have ever had since we're birthed. The idea is there is a force that is out there that we do not know, that we do not see, that we do not feel, in fact, most of the time, that is actually affecting our bodies and affecting our choices and decisions in life. And as much as we don't know, and as much as your body is like doing millions of things, of processes inside of you that you don't even know or aware of right now. Like right now, how many neurons are being fired in your brain and you don't know about about it, you're not aware of it, you know. And how much of your stomach is working and you don't know about it, you know. Exactly, all kinds of things are happening and you're not aware of it. You know it's there, but you're not aware of it. In the same way, there are stars out there, we're saying, that are actually controlling and moving you in the same way that your body is being moved right now and is doing its own thing and surviving and living. So now it's knowledge is power. So knowing this kinds of stuff also kind of gives you the ability to make different dua, different decision, different requests from God, so that you can actually get closer, right?
Yeah, even the Jews, I mean, we mentioned that in the beginning of the Goal of the Wise when we first started, how even Eve was saying, "Ye luminary bodies, inform my master Adam about what's been going on," basically. And that's in, I believe it's page 4 or 7 of the Goal of the Wise in the very beginning when we first had this discussion. So we see over here that, you know, as I mentioned earlier, Imam Ali making dua and like facing the moon and speaking to the moon. And even in some narrations, he's even having a full-on conversation with the moon or the sun. And we also find Eve, the mother of humanity, speaking to 2 luminary bodies that actually go and inform Adam and then bring him to Eve. So that's something that we cannot now leave off the table. So we see over here that there is a big science behind it, and there is a big reason behind why it is that they are identified as believers here on the earth. And the one who really put all this together, the author of astrology and astronomy and the science of the stars, was actually Prophet Idris, Prophet Enoch, the one who you mentioned from the book of Enoch. The way that he was able to know all these things was due to that, which is extremely fascinating what you brought up, because it's something that not only do they associate with Enoch, but they associate it with Hermes, they associate it with Thoth, they associate it with other gods in other mythologies having done the same thing, that there was that one god who, or that one historical mythological or legendary character that existed, who was a father and the origin of the sciences of the luminary bodies, the celestial bodies.
Exactly.
But now, okay, what do we do with that information? Now we go back to the Imam of the time who was able to know. And did you know that the Imam of the time, because of that, just as Jesus was able to know about the time in which Judas Iscariot was going to go astray, the Imam of the time also knows by the signs of the stars. And if a person gets their hands on it, they're able to know the times of the birth and the death of certain souls and certain beings that are related to these star systems. And that is something fascinating.
That is a huge science right there.
It is a huge science. So then that goes to tell you that if there was a person in the past whose star is indicated as such, for example, let's say that there is a person who was Jupiter, right? Jupiter comes, right, you know, in the form of a human being now, but then Jupiter dies. But now if we understood the science of the stars, we would be able to know when Jupiter would come back as a human being and when he would leave the earth again. So that is
not just that. You can actually,
science.
like scientifically, you can say, like for the sake of argument, that if you know the trajectory of things, you know where they're heading, then you will know where they're going to hit. Then you will know what kind of reaction is going to happen after that. So imagine a billiard ball, right? Like you hit the ball. If you know the trajectory of where the ball is heading, you know where it's going to hit the other billiard ball, right? Exactly where. To the point where you can predict where the next ball is going to go and where it's going to hit and go, and which pocket is going to fall in, at what speed, at what force, at what velocity, at all these things, and you could predict all of this kinds of stuff. So we're saying is that there is a science of the stars where you can actually be able to, if you had the ability to see the trajectory of all these hits that happen, to the point where you know the death of a person's time, because imagine that's falling in the hole of a, you know, the ball falling in the hole. So you could imagine that, you can literally see it in that way. There is a science out there which can predict this kind of level of detail. And who knew that science? For sure we know Jesus knew. For sure we know Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew. For sure the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam knew. For sure, historically speaking, other prophets and messengers and other holy beings had known this science. And we're telling you that al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam for sure knows this science. And so be be tuned with us, like as we discover these amazing knowledge, this amazing kind of information and these revelations from al-Sadiq that alters our perception of reality itself and how we live and how we breathe. Everything changes because you cannot be the same after knowing something like this.
No, for sure not. And when it comes to the celestial bodies, are we saying that all people who come talking about horoscopes and stars and zodiacs are truthful? No, actually, most of the time they're not. And the reason why that they're not is because the science of the stars, although it was known in the past, became corrupted over time because of certain things that took place in history, in which we will go on to in the next episode as to why the human beings became confused over the calculations of the planetary bodies and how the calculations were messed up for the times to come, and who reverted back and recalculated them in order that we may know the truth from falsehood. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully we go back to the Goal of the Wise, door number 8, to continue with the celestial bodies. Thank you very much, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.